though often hidden in plain sight, or just out of earshot, as it were, God is a part of our lives in all we are and in all that we do. And in our readings this Sunday, we witness God's call to a variety of people over a nearly 2,800-year span, from the time of Isaiah to our hearing these stories today. Being called by God involves recognizing and discerning and then living out our vocation. Vocation, from the Latin vocare, meaning to call. It's about listening for the call of God and then discovering the gifts you have to carry out that call, and finally heading in the direction or doing the work that is called for by God. Or as a 17th century Puritan leader defined it, vocation is, quote, that whereunto God hath appointed us to serve the common good. Yet having said that, it's important to understand vocation, calling, as something broader than a set of tasks to which we are summoned. As Gene Feith put it, finding our vocation, our calling, is not just finding my life work, nor even finding what God wants me to do. Finding our vocation is largely a matter of finding where God is, the God who hides in our neighbors, in ourselves, and in the world. Once we notice the hidden God at work, in the workplace, in families, the community, and the church, and when we realize the part we may play in God's design, we have found our vocation. Now, with that in mind, I've long asked what the difference is between a career and a calling. Well, without doubt, a career and a calling can be and often are combined and well integrated. But for many, they are not. For many, often their career is not much more than a job. For the sake of distinguishing career and calling, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, relying on some contrasts made by William Sloane Coffin. Coffin states that a career seeks to be successful. A calling seeks to be valuable. A career tries as one of its top priorities to make money. A calling tries to make a difference. A career demands technical intelligence to learn a skill, to find out how to get from here to there. A calling demands critical intelligence to question whether there is worth going toward. If something is not worth doing, it's not worth doing well. A career demands being smart. A calling calls forth wisdom. Now, it's interesting to note that the words career and car come from the same Latin word, carrera, meaning racetrack. Now, to Coffin, this suggests that a car and a career both have you going in circles, rapidly, repeatedly, and competitively. And to carry the comparison a bit further, a car is an automobile, meaning a self-driven vehicle And as such, a car frees you from traveling with others. A car gives us privacy as we speed down public thoroughfares toward our own private destinations. A career can also be a very private and self-driven journey. Whereas a calling would have us connect to a wider community and serve the common good. A calling sees service as the purpose of life, not something you might consider doing only if it fits strategically or in your spare time. And finally, a calling is not against ambition, but considers ambition a good servant, yet a bad master. And Coffin nails it by saying, quote, "You might say that a career helps you win the rat race. A calling reminds you that even if you win a rat race, even still you have become a rat." Of course, many people are forced into or feel trapped by certain types of work, where neither a career nor a calling can really happen, never mind be integrated. Many have jobs where their labor is demanded while their spirits are damned, where they cannot begin to make ends meet, or they find themselves feeling stuck, limited by their own abilities or inabilities, and fear the insecurity rendered them by their employers and the wider economy and society. Others lack a community or social environment in which they can look at choices, alternatives, and discern their callings. For these and for many even worse off, who are involuntarily unemployed or destitute and seem to only wander in uncertainty, both career and calling remain, if at all, only a hope. But having said all that, God does call each and everyone, no matter their circumstances or stage in life. The most basic thing we see when we look at today's readings is that it's important to listen to the voice that is calling. There are all kinds of voices calling us to all different kinds of action or distraction or reaction or inaction. Our challenge is to distinguish the voice of God in the midst of these other voices, including our own and others' voices that often tell us just how limited and inadequate we are. Voices coming at us and voices within us, and we all experience them, have to be evaluated. The more intense and insistent they are, the more essential it is to do this. Messages come from many sources. They can be angelic and creative, or destructive from a shadow source, if you will. We do well if we, like Isaiah in our first reading, Paul in our second, or Peter, James, and John in our gospel, are troubled or concerned when something deeply directive wells up within us and we feel called to specific action. Thank God that God doesn't necessarily call those who are worthy. Rather, God makes worthy those whom God calls. When sensing a call, we, like these biblical witnesses, often feel perplexed, unprepared, incapable, unworthy, fearful, reluctant, "Not me, Lord." And even annoyed and inconvenienced, "Not now, Lord." As with everything else in life, these feelings have a legitimate role. They can act as warnings. They can clear our vision, to see false notes in a possibility, to see traps, to realize that we are attracted to something that is essentially unwise and harmful. But on the other hand, these feelings, along with so much else that distracts us, can keep us on the edge of possible action, or worse, immobilize us. So we ask, what is it that can give us some assurance that the voice we hear calling is from God and not from some other source? Well, the writer Susan Farnham describes this well, and it rings true to me. She describes, quote, "a catching of the signals," so to speak, a sense of various senses we have that our call is true and right. Set of senses we experience when something deeply and divinely directive wells up inside us. Senses such as that sense of peace and purposefulness we sometimes get, or the sense of energy and fruitfulness that comes with such a call, or the sense that the call is genuine because it's been coming to us persistently and from a convergence of voices, our own and others. And finally, if a sense of call taps into a deep sense of gladness or joy that makes you really come alive, chances are the call is from God. And Frederick Buechner put it very succinctly in his well-known line, quote, "The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." But lesser known, but I would say an equally powerful quote is from Howard Thurman, who put this in an even more encouraging way. He wrote, "Don't ask what the world needs. Rather ask, what makes you come alive? Then go and do it, because what the world needs are people who have come alive." Again, God does call each and every one, and not just a few. And whoever else we are as a church, we are called to be about the business of helping each other discern and test and live out our calls in the context of each person's giftedness and limitations, their freedom and constraints, and then to confirm and support them to pursue their vocation and, where possible, to integrate with their career and with all the rest of what makes them who they really are. I'll conclude with Robert Frost. Robert Frost summed this up well at the end of his poem, "Two Tramps in Mud Time." Frost wrote, "My object in life is to unite my avocation and my vocation, as my two eyes make one in sight. Only where love and need are one, and the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done, for heaven and the future's sakes." Amen. Using the form on page 53 in the Book of Common Prayer, let us rise as we proclaim our faith, saying together the Apostles' Creed. together.